Oh, thank you. I couldn't live without that.
The idea of the people who are Anglicans, meaning they conform to the Church of England, are the individuals who are part of what are viewed to be the true church, or the only church. And the others are not acceptable. Exactly. And as late as, I'll say, the 1970s, there were still some people who were speaking about nonconformists, like Methodists. Isn't that awful? I mean, it was like, even though, we love our Methodist and Presbyterian friends, but, and it's like nothing personal. You're just a nonconformist. You just don't adhere to the church. But that was 50 years ago. I can't imagine how it is now. I'm sure it's quite different. But that was I think how long that was, though, into the 20th century. And of course, papists, recusants, because they refused to even go to a church. And some were not even admitted. Yeah. You might try to get by and say, well, I don't believe it, but because I'm a Pope lover, and they'll say, well, you're not coming in these doors. So, just to add a bit to what Frank spoke of so eloquently, now let me say a little more about Charles II and his wonderful Portuguese bride. We all love Portugal very much. And we understand the significance of Portugal and its empire. Some of us remember the year 1974. Judy, I know you already know that, because your date knowledge is beyond belief. I mean, the end of the Portuguese Empire in Africa. Does that ring a bell? Say yes, Judy. I'll be okay as long as I know you're with me. So I know you have a lot of questions about how does England play a role in this, and I thought you'd never ask. That's why I'm here. You often think maybe I'll just get something from Tiffany's or some other place when somebody gets married. I used to send things from Wares, and all of that. That's a jewelry store, them that we all loved. And you could see all the china and patterns, and then I want one of those, that sort of thing. Send that to her. Catherine Braganza, though, her family, her Portuguese family, they were paying the price. And it was a serious price. And guess what it was? Bombay and Tangiers, a little bit of India, a little bit of Morocco. And you say, that's good stuff. You're mighty right. I mean, you might like some crystal and silver from Tiffany's, but this is a lot better. And these were payments that the Portuguese had to make to get married to Charles II. And Charles II now married Catherine Braganza. She was never able to carry through on a pregnancy, but they were married for a long time. And he had a number of special friends, because that's all part of what we call the Restoration. It's like love in all the wrong places. And I'm sure that it hurt her feelings. And I guess she was taking English 101, 102. And because I don't think he was learning a lot of Portuguese, But I guess if you know Spanish, Lee, would you pick up Portuguese pretty easily?
I've heard that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's got to be tough though. In any event, it's very interesting during this whole restoration period, don't you think? I mean, to think about this is just one aspect of it. But another interesting aspect, Parliament's back. It's not democratic. That's a long way off, right? But it's going to be there. And we know that old Oliver Cromwell might have sent him home and said, I can't put up with you anymore. But remember how the Long Parliament came back, and with General Monk, they decided to bring the king back. Remember that from last time? Now we have a situation in which Parliament is going, as far as I know, the first time began to organize in what would have to be called political parties. Now we think about, I mean, if I went up to somebody on College Street tonight and said, what are the major political parties in Great Britain? Every Harvard student would know Labor and Conservative. I mean, obviously, right? Thank you. Yeah, War Eagle. So we understand the academic level that we have on our streets. But that's not exactly the situation we had back then, because it's basically, and you probably learned this in Political Science 101 or whatever they called it, the idea of political parties are merely coalitions of various groups. And that's certainly true of the House of Commons and House of Lords, but particularly House of Commons, because that's the quote unquote representatives of the regular people. Well, not so regular. They are people who don't have titles like Duke and so forth, but usually they are well-to-do. Not usually. I don't think there are too many poor folks not in the Restoration parliaments. They may have had a few God-fearing folk who were just mildly well-to-do, but I don't think there were any of the poor. That is much, much later, if even at all. But meanwhile, these two groups that more or less coalesce together are called Whigs and Tories. Now, some of you already know Whigs from your American history. And with the brilliance of some in the room, you would like to probably discuss the Whigs. If I mention John Tyler and Zachary, I mean, you would get very excited, but I'm going to hold back on that. I'm going to just say Whigs tended to be rabidly anti-Catholic, and as a result, having a queen who's rabidly, they would say, Catholic. Well, because the Portuguese get a bad rap. I mean, they are serious Catholics. Remember Prince Henry the Navigator? Who could forget it, right? I mean, the way we think of the Portuguese and their Catholicism, she was allowed to have it, but she had to keep it to herself. You know what I mean? You gotta get off in your own group, but don't be disturbing our church services, our common prayer church services. Right. You papists. So all of that is to say the Whigs would tend to sort of create more fear about Catholicism, and they would tend to make sure that Parliament gets plenty of recognition. I want to be careful here because I don't mean that they want any more Cromwells. No, no, no. That's gone. That was ugly. I'm sure if there were any Cromwellian people out there, they would be in the closet. I know I would be. I wouldn't be going around and telling people I heart Cromwell. No, that was over. Remember when we saw the thing that those folks were dug up? Not good for mortuary science. But the idea here is that the other side, the Tories, and that term, as we all know from newspaper, well, people do newspapers anymore, but media, the term Tory refers to conservatives, and originally it was called Tories, meaning a party that was royalist. We can't get enough of Charles II, the way we feel about him. I mean, it's like hugs and kisses, and you're the greatest, and there's no limit to the adoration. All of this is tied in with the Church of England. You say, well, I sort of like the king, but I don't want any more of that Book of Common Prayer. And I want to reinstall the statue of the Blessed Virgin. Then you can't be a Tory. I don't know what you can be, but you can't be one of us because you're a danger. Go study, become a major in Portuguese language and literature, I guess. I don't know. Because that's the latest one we don't like. Because she sleeps with the king. That is the Portuguese Catholic. So all of that is to say Whigs versus Tories. And it makes it sound simple. But as you know, political parties aren't simple at all. And these are the two that will evolve over time. And they will go up and down, just like political parties do in this country and in Britain and Canada and whatnot. All of that is to say that Tories were in good shape in what we refer to as the Cavalier Parliament. Has good sound to it, doesn't it? Oh, yeah. The Cavalier, and the term Cavalier, reflects in English literature. You remember studying the gather ye rosebuds while ye may and all of that comes from this period. Did you take extensive classes in literature? That's the idea of Richard Herrick. In any event, the idea is it's fairly frivolous. I mean, in a good way. And the idea, of course, of the Cavalier Parliament is to make sure, I won't say C of E just to make for short, but the Anglican Church gets everything it desires. And let's keep the king happy. And yet there are going to be differences. As Frank pointed out, these two groups, and I use the term nonconformists because I think it's more familiar, but dissenters, recusants are the common terms in the 17th century, meaning everyone who's not an Anglican. And then you think about what if you're a Quaker, you're Jewish? I would have to say special exceptions. I mean, in the world, the nonconformists generally include that arch villain, the Presbyterians. And you say, gosh, I know some Presbyterians, they're lovely people. I know, that's now. But the problem with Presbyterians is they want to have a state church. Well, what's wrong with that? Because they don't want a prayer book. I know. Those are fighting words. I'll see you outside. Yeah, we're over the prayer book. Yeah. What would Thomas Cranmer say about that? He would be hurt. But seriously, it's like this particular, I hate to call it a dispute, but whoever was behind the king's advisors, and I'm not necessarily saying they were pro-Portugal or anything like that, or they were listening to the Queen because she would have said, keep the king at home or something like that. But more or less, there is a sense that he wants to go easy on his, shall we call them, Catholic friends. He has a lot of friends who love the Mass, who say, hey, you want to get some rosary beads? Yeah. You got some? Yeah, I'll see you pass them on to you. Yeah. I mean, it's like that's what happens in the reaction to the so-called Declaration of Indulgence. I love that term, Declaration of Indulgence, because basically I can indulge you in something, and it doesn't mean I approve of it. It just means you can do it. For example, we started some years ago on Good Friday. They could miss class. That's an indulgence that we gave. But it didn't mean we approved it. They were responsible for the material. Because I said, you could pray right here in Auburn. Perhaps you don't need to leave. I can recommend, have a list here of some churches. Sarcasm reigns supreme, right? And I'd say, there's no need for you not to be with us. Perhaps after that, you can go to worship services in Opelika or Auburn. No, we got to be with my family. Yeah, right. Little cynical there. But an indulgence means you can do it. That doesn't mean I have to approve of it. Because I'll never approve of class absence. Because you think, well, maybe I'm sick. Or I'm not. Because class is more important than any sickness, right? So there you go. Yeah. So you won't need any cuts. But indulgence means I accept it. Human fallacy. Yeah. But you're still responsible. So that's what it meant for the Declaration of Indulgence. You can go to your mass or whatever you people call it, but that doesn't mean it's going to be state sponsored.
Yeah. Jesuits around every corner.
Exactly. And those Presbyterians. Ugh. Because the Anglicans are the only way to go. If you want to be, remember that song with the in crowd? Yeah. So that was an old song that was popular. I'm in with the in crowd. Because that was the Anglicans. So you say, I love me some Calvin. I heart Calvin. I heart me Knox. No. Cranmer? Yes. So, how do you like that mustache and that coif? Yeah, very 17th century. You would know. I mean, if you saw him out tonight, you'd say, "Boy, you're like something out of the 17th century." And call him a steward and see the reaction. They'll be so flattered. I mean, yeah. Now, Parliament, and this is called almost like the party's over. It's time to call it a day. We almost had it made. Law between the Anglican Parliament and the King, because Parliament reacted to what's called the Test Act. And the Test Act, which more or less stayed in effect, I think, until the early 19th century, required you to receive communion in the Church of England, or you want to go to Oxford, you want to go to Cambridge. Well, you're not going. Maybe you can go to, I don't know, tech school or something, because you're not going to these schools.
Nice school in Portugal.
Yeah, exactly. A Lisbon state or something. Yeah, it's not. I love Portugal. So no, this is not to be offensive. It's just to say that there are all kinds of restrictions because of the Test Act. Was it totally honest? I doubt it. I bet you some people told a little lie.
So the Anglican Church will give communion to people that are not members.
Well, they will if they don't know any better. I mean, it's like, Judy, if you walked in and said, I'm not Methodist, I'm an Anglican, and I'm the priest, I will accept your word because you have such a wonderful face. You know what I mean? You reek of truth. So it's.
But lots of churches will not give communion to people that are not.
No, but I mean, this period means basically it's kind of like a civil rights issue. It's like, no, they're not going to give communion to non-Anglicans. But it's not so much about receiving communion as it is about holding civil office. If you're not an Anglican, and this may clear this up, let me show you this. I love the actual oath. So it seems, and you say, what about folks who are doing sheep farming and all that? I don't think they need to worry too much about that. They'll just do what they're told. But so if you're worried about stating the oath, notice what it said. I am, state your name. Do declare, I do believe there is not any transubstantiation. Yeah. That, I'm touching your brain. Oh, God. That gets
What are those?
That titillates
Sounds
me.
like it's
So,
scrambled.
12:15 Lateran Council, as you know. That means the priest, through his word, consecrates the bread and wine, and it becomes the flesh and blood. And this is transubstantiated. It will still look like bread and wine, but substantially.
Oh, wow.
I know. Think of Landfront. Think about Archbishop Canterbury during the Roman period. You know this. You can open up that particular bag of knowledge later. But I want you to stay focused on the 17th century. But yeah, she wants to get to the 11th century, yeah. But basically, that's transubstantiation. Now, if you are a Presbyterian, you might think, well, it's sort of that, like Lutherans. They supposedly had some idea of consubstantiation. If you believe it's really Christ's body and blood, it is. Or it could just be a commemorative, like Christ and his apostles. But you are a transubstantiation person. You are not going to Oxford or Cambridge. Losers. So, and you say, well, that's hurtful. Yeah, I know it is, but you could straighten out and come to the Church of England. we had extra copies of the Book of Common Prayer. So we could provide them for you. You see the idea, though, you have to take the oath. And if you refuse to take the oath, well,
You go
then,
to school.
well, yeah, it's school, it's holding office.
Yeah.
And that will go on until, I think, the 19th century.
About 1812. I think.
Mhm. So it's a very, very powerful impetus for Anglican authority. I mean, there's a good reason for it to be called the Church of England. And if you are something else, you can be whatever you want to be, but you're not going to be in any position of authority. Oh, now there were plenty of noble Catholics, but by the Toleration Act, they were tolerated. You know, they could take their sacraments and have their priests, but sort of keep it private, keep it quiet. But you don't have to be on the down low anymore. You could do it, but it's not mainstream. Is that the way you would say it now? So all of that, and I thought the words here were very good. And consecration there by any person whatsoever, and I thought that was neat. I think who could do? I mean, you know, Joe or Jane off the street. I think I'll consecrate it. See, no, it doesn't work that way. We have certain individuals who can do it, and Jesuits
Jesuits can do
yeah,
it. Yeah.
they can do it. The priests, but this becomes something. So it's not a case of who's going to receive the sacraments. Obviously, for a long time, I guess only Catholics could receive their sacraments, and so, and in the same way, Episcopalians. All of this, what you call closed communion, went on probably in the late 20th, early 21st centuries. All of that is neither here nor there, just so you understand that this will become a very difficult issue in dealing with these parliaments and the king. And a lot of people thought there must be a lot of Catholics hanging around the king. Well, for goodness sakes, remember his mother? Of course you do. Remember, she was part of the French royal family. You knew that. So, I mean, it's not like, and his wife, not even when she became fairly fluent in English, I don't think she had too much. Oh, hon, could you help us with our masses go on? I don't think anything like that. But I think he had relations with the French. Remember, he'd been in exile for a while. Who can forget Cromwell? I know I won't. And during that time, remember, he was probably keeping Catholic company. So all of this is expanding during this period, and I don't think he's completely out and out sympathetic to Catholics. He's not going around and saying, you know, I'd love to invite more Catholics over home. Do you think it's possible? Maybe have some nice scones and ale or something like that. I don't think it's quite that, but there is going to be evidence. Now we go into what is so well known from this period, a resurgence of the plague. We all understand, and I guess the medical historians will tell you that these kinds of diseases have a habit of coming back, and particularly when the conditions, which I don't even like to think about, and I'm sure for the sake of a pleasant discussion, we don't want to even think about what it would be like to live in Midtown London I mean, I love Midtown Atlanta in the 70s, but this is not that. This is Midtown London in the, yes. What does the word plumbing mean to you? Yeah.
Sewers have yet to be invented.
Yes, yes. So we won't go there. We will just say it's not good for good health. I just said the word cholera. Is that? Yeah, that'll give you enough information. So it is amazing the amount of debt and how odd that it's not throughout England. We can understand why a massive urban area like London, but there had been nothing like this, I suppose, since the 14th century. I'm in no way considering myself an expert on the history of place, but when you think of the amount of death, obviously the king and queen escaped, and I guess people, what would you say, people of the land were not as affected, but obviously people who are living in proximity to each other and who are carrying all these kinds of diseases. And this was going on, as you see, from the day 65 to 66. And thanks, some of you know the diaries of Samuel Pepys or other sources describe how horrible it was, like nothing. I think that most people, English, well, I mean, not the same people, but people of the England had seen since the 14th century, on that level of death and disease. And remember, not that much was known still about what to do about it. I don't think the progress of medicine had reached the knowledge and understanding of what to do, except live through it. And then the Great London Fire. Can you imagine 3 days of that? Because there's no fire department. It just burned much of what would you call it, inner city London. And those days, and so I guess they had a lot of urban renewal. And it must be, it's hard to imagine. And some people, I'm not guaranteeing this is correct, that this ended the plague because all those people and places were destroyed. Could you imagine after 3 days, fires like that? I mean, we know something about arson and burning, but I can't imagine. I mean, I don't know how much, I'm sure the king was here saying his media of the day passed on his best wishes. But it was certainly one of the major events for those who are interested in social and economic history to think about the changes it would make. Sadly, not changes, I guess, in medical knowledge, but it became very important. While, yes, there would be further outbursts of the plague, certainly this particular one ended with, at least temporarily, a population reduction in London. You can't imagine the horror of all of it. But that's in the mid 1660s. And so if you're trying to do social history, I guess, this is something that is very, very important. Meanwhile, the king and the rosary beads. You ever say when you're in one of the palaces around, Hampton Court or wherever you say, it's nice, but it's hardly Versailles. All right, Snooty One, let me tell you, we are very proud of our English palaces, but sometimes there is a sense of envy. I wish we had bigger palaces. I wish, gosh, when you have family reunions and get-togethers with the cousins, it's not you're jealous. You just wish you had something as nice. And I think that's part of the relationship he had with Louis XIV. And you said, you mean the Sun King? Indeed, I do. Now, Frank mentioned Arbor Day is coming. Is that tomorrow? Then who could use a tree? I could. So, what tree do I want to go to? An Anglo-French one. Now, you know all this already. Charles II's mother was sister to Louis XIII, Louis XIV's father. You know. It's in there. It'll never. So basically, you're thinking, you mean they're cousins? Nay, we. And you can get that in French 101. That's not big time. But seriously, I mean, the connections are all there. I mean, you can't come out and say that at Parliament and say, oh, let's just all hug French people, we, and all that. No. They've been the enemy a long time. Remember Calais? Of course you do. You're not going to forget it, are you? That bygone to be out? You're too young. Heck no. See, I always consider young people. So basically, you understand, then, this was a very serious matter. So this had to be done. Well, I mean, they could have a relationship, like Thanksgiving, get together with the cousins, so then this is once a year. Basically, Louis was looking for ways to expand French influence. And Charles II was looking for what many of us wish for, the filth of lucre.
Cash.
Why do we want so much money? Well, because we're evil, number one. And number two,
Why not?
well,
You
because
don't have to spend it on good things.
exactly, you can spend it on government services, and you can spend it on making a poor. But more or less, you don't want to have to ask Parliament, because they can be really annoying. And there was a group, the Righteous Brothers, and this was called "You've Lost That Money Feeling." You remember that? I thought you.
I could sing it.
Well, it was a test act to protect us. Yeah, so I don't want no. Oh God, keep that in your own home. That's rated R. We don't. But anyway, basically, you remember the good times when we loved Parliament. Parliament loved us. And they want to be picky about money because they want to increase their authority. Money is the way. All of that then is Charles and his advisors are going to, shall we say, on the slide, begin this kinds of diplomatic effort to increase the relationship based on Francophilia. Yeah, a heart. I know. And you say, oh, are you sure we want that? If the price is right, yeah. And it's a very interesting business. Look where they had the treaty, Dover. Some of you have been to Dover, White Cliffs of Dover. We all know that poem.
Nice.
Yeah. And all of that's to say, I figured they were agents, like plain clothes. But they represented the two kings. I'm sure that those two kings were not there, but these agents were representing those monarchs. And the deal was money. It's all about money. I know. You say, but there are things that are more important. Really? Apparently, kings never found anything. I know. You could say honor or cooperation with Parliament, peace, love. Yeah, I know. But the idea was that, and this had to be very hush hush. Talk about secret diplomacy. The French were at war with the Netherlands. And we heart the Dutch, right? I mean, well, that pretty much blew that under Cromwell, didn't it, with the wars of the British. And now the French are at war with the Dutch. Can you imagine the Dutch? They do more than tulips, right? I mean, they've got an empire. They are very, very developed as a warring power. And meanwhile, to get the English away from the Dutch, this will be a question of offering, shall we call it financial support? I don't know how to, I hate to say bribes and make it sound evil, but you know what it is. It's not good. It's corrupt. And this will be done covertly. And what else? Oh, no, not that. Yes. Make popery the state religion again.
This is since it smells good.
Oh, God. I'm bad.
I got it.
Okay. It was okay, but it wasn't. Let's not build him up. Yeah. Good.
I'm sorry.
I'm in charge. Trying to replace me, and I don't like it one bit. The idea of bringing back Catholicism, what do you think? But that sounds like something from the Tudors. I know you remember Mary. You won't forget it. But yeah, we're not ready for that. Or yeah,
All that, right?
Yeah.
Damn sure.
and we're not gonna get rosary beads out on the streets for sale. So basically, that's what Charles. I cannot believe either of them could take that very seriously. That Charles is going to bring back Roman Catholicism to please Louis XIV, or should I call him Cousin Louis? And again, Arbor Day, remember your tree, Louis XIII, and his sister, Henrietta Maria. God, you're smart. Okay, so you've got that, and you've got them as cousins. You got it once it's planted. Seeds going, blooming to a great plant of knowledge. So, if you're not going to have a child by Catherine, despite repeated attempts, when he had a break, from dating, that's what we euphemistically call it these days. He'd say, I think I'll go home and see if I can impregnate. I know. I knew you'd like it. That's why. So back to Catherine. Few miscarriages, but nothing solid, so to speak, like a pregnancy. So as time goes on, and Charles has some age on him. He's looking at little brother. Should we just say Jamie? Or James? We've already had one James. But this James, you know him better from your American studies. As the Duke of York. I know, because he led the naval forces that took those lands from the Dutch. Remember when the English captured New Amsterdam?
We're not that old.
No, but he was a very important figure in your American history, as they no doubt had, and you've treasured that ever since. The knowledge of the English and the Dutch fighting in North America. Yeah. So all of that is to say that James, and remember, this is another child of Henrietta Maria and Charles I. Remember? Yeah. I'd like to have a tree before you, Arbor Day, but I'd also like it to be up here. You do? Okay. I feel better. Whenever Lee says it, I believe it. Yes. So all of this then is so that he looks like he's going to be the one. You know, oh, Charles, I'm sorry you're not feeling well. You know, because when that ship sails, then James is going to be the successor. A little more about James, Duke of York. And Duke of York, as we've learned from media in past months, has been and still is, as far as I know, a very, very important title among the English peers, if one cares about that sort of thing. In any event, James had gone to exile like the rest of the family during those Cromwellian times. You say, how long must we talk about Cromwell? I'm sorry, but he just comes back to haunt our thoughts. It's never, all the therapy is not clear. Royal, I know, dig them up and toss them. You don't belong in our cemetery. So, all of that is interesting to think about living, I think, in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, James had a career, a military man, and now we'll have the reign that begins in 1685. And you say, wow, do we need to know that? Will that be on the final? Yes, it will, because it's an easy one to remember. I just like to be kind. 1685 to 1688. Say that's something everybody can know. You say, wow, his health was not good. No, his health was fine, but he had issues, and issues that will be worked out in what the British call the Glorious Revolution. They sometimes call it the Bloodless Revolution. To make this medical, it doesn't really mean bloodless. It just means because It just means that there were no armies really involved because it's sort of like a transfer of power. And I mean, it's like the Marcos family, which you know so well, flying to Hawaii. I mean, it was good while it lasted, and we have some IRAs and something
Well,
in Switzerland, and we can make do. So this glorious revolution, as we're going to see, will transfer and give us the college, William and Mary, which you know about. But here's my trick. Now, since you already know the connection of French, which actually is not emphasized here, but you can see Charles and Henrietta Maria, then go down and you see Charles II, and then you see James II. You see James II?
Yep.
And he's married to someone named Anne Hyde. And Anne Hyde, you see that? Can you see that? Anne Hyde was actually the daughter of someone who was a legal expert, and he was also in exile, and he'll become very important in terms of God in our world. I guess he'd be Attorney General, Charles II. But he was a man of great importance, even though not of the highest rank. But James, Duke of York, the future James II, was somewhat, I don't want to shock you, promiscuous. I know. So instead of getting that ring, he said, "Baby, I think I love you." And to one of the daughters of the Hydes, there you see her, Anne Hyde. You see her. And guess what happens? Something that we don't hear so much in the South as we did in the day, a shotgun wedding. Because Sir Edward Hyde, the future Lord Clarendon, basically says to the Duke of York, "Now, you know my daughter, she's going to have a bandana. And he needs to do something. Well, maybe a payoff or just put this on the write-off or something." No. No, I mean, this, and it was rather controversial. Charles II did approve of it, and he married Anne Hyde. She would die of breast cancer fairly early on, but she had two daughters, one named Mary and the other named Anne. You see them? Right, I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
Everybody. I'm big on Arbor Day, getting all those limbs.
A lot of tree.
Yeah. And you say, well, then what's Mary going to do? Well, we're going to look, make sure she has a nice husband. Now, this is the daughter of James II as king in 1685. She's going to get a duchy. He's a major leader, his name is William Orange. And that's part of what we call the Netherlands. And you say, do you mean that, William? I do. And look who his mother is. Mary. Gosh, that name rings a bell. Yes, they were cousins, William and Mary. I know that you worry about their genetic. I know. And the P's appreciate your concern, but do you see how that works though? Mary is actually the sister of Charles II, and then she will marry the Dutchman, William, and then they have William, the Dutch leader, and he'll be married to the English Mary. And that's where we get the college duty you know so well, William and Mary. So I just want you may want to speak about this to the kinfolk and say, oh, we talked about William and Mary. Yes, that's where it comes from, right there. And there's poor Anne, and we'll talk more about her. She was the others. So you say, well, that's well and good, but what happens then? Well, their mother died of breast cancer and her. So James, when he's dating, I don't want you to think he stopped dating. Okay, I was worried that you think the period of mourning was brief. So he's ready to, he had taken a very short sabbatical of celibacy. And he was ready for someone new. But enough of that for the time being, because this Duke of York, who will now become the king, is from start to finish highly controversial. While they were still exiles, and they had to leave France, believe it or not. Sometimes, if you're exiles, you can wear out your welcome. Because I always wonder what the Syrians are going to do in Moscow. Do you think they'll ever? I worry about things that really none of my concern. It's like the Assads, they live in Moscow now. And I keep thinking, I wonder if they get, nice checks from the Russian government.
I think they brought plenty of money with them.
Okay, I just want to, okay, then I won't worry. Thank you, Frank. I've been so nervous these past weeks, but I deal better with that now. But that's idea. I mean, sometimes you think, I thought, but there was that song after the loving. What's gonna that's famous. But anyway, more or less, what is going to happen? And the idea about James is, of course, he's going to become the king. It is said that Charles was basically maybe on his deathbed and suddenly said, guess what? I heart the Pope, right. Had the secret Roman t-shirt or something.
His hedge and his bets.
Yeah. And but that's the idea, God. I've got my secret rosary and I never told you. Yeah. And then you're dead. I mean, really, all that matters is that now his brother, who will become James II, is sort of out and proud. I don't have to hide it anymore.
Okay.
Not like my older brother. I'm out. And you say, but is he living the life of a good Catholic? Well, his incontinence is a problem. Okay, he should probably practice chastity, but that's a no-go. And so, but I know you'd really be amazed. These Stewarts, they really enjoyed being somewhat loose. And so we know that he was very famous for his naval achievements. So we want to give the future king credit there. But he was also serious about his power. And we all love them. Nephews and nieces are precious gifts from above. How James, when he became king, felt about his nephew, I'm not so sure. The Duke of Monmouth, who was supposed to be a very attractive man, there was a song by the Supremes called Love Child. And it talks about what happens when you are the baby, the results. Well, this would be true for the Duke of Monmouth. You say, well, that's a nice title. Well, even though you're illegitimate, that doesn't mean you don't have nice things. It just means you're not really eligible for the throne. So he's Charles II's eldest love child. And I mean, brought up any nice things. It's not as if, no, you on a tight budget, you little bastard. No. I mean, no, it's not. No, it's not going to be any of that. I wish I could have married your mother. That would have been so nice. But you're going to get a nice check. Like
Nice
I'm hoping.
title.
Yeah, the Assads or Marcos. Yeah. Shoe allowance. All of that is to say that the Duke of Monmouth was a very, I was going to say serious, no, I'll say serious Protestant. And he basically created, and he had much support, revolt against his uncle. You say, oh no. Yes, it happens in the best of families. So, the Duke of Monmouth creates a revolt of sorts against a Catholic king. Overtly. Yeah. He's going to mass. He's got beads everywhere you look, rosaries. I mean, a crucifix. Maybe in the past.
Jesuit friends.
Yeah. So basically, the Monmouth revolt was quite spectacular. When you have the opportunity to be at the National Portrait Gallery or elsewhere in London, the portraits of him showed a very handsome man. His mother, Monmouth's mother, was one of Charles' favorite mistresses. So, I mean, we love the Portuguese. I'm not, but I'm just saying that was not, he had no Portuguese inheritance. It's like a special friend that David.
Friends with benefits.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So, all of this is to say that Monmouth is going to end up check in to our favorite tower, the Tower of London. Maybe there was a short debate about his future, but you know as well as I know, there are going to be no appeals. Uncle James is going to say, chop, chop. So that's the end of the Duke of Monmouth. But that went on, this little Monmouthian revolt with thousands of supporters. Because again, the anti-Catholic movement, and maybe Charles, if he were still around, would have been urging his brother to keep it in the closet. And just bring out the rosaries at night and don't tell any of the servants. I don't know. But there was still a lot of Protestant sentiment and a lot of anti-James feeling. Well, James decided to get married again. You know, that period of grief, losing the special person. You gotta go on. I know. So, King James had therapy, and he said, maybe we need to marry again. Maybe go online, meet somebody special. Start dating, getting out there, let's say in the whole market. Yeah. So I don't think he had too much of a problem. But he wanted a nice Catholic.
Young.
Yes, because of fertility issues. Because you remember the first wife, she produced 2 daughters, but this time he wanted someone serious who would produce the son. So this will be she, Mary of Modena, an Italian. So he has 2 daughters already. And you know, speaking of Hallmark, this isn't going to be Hallmark. It's not like, oh, stepmom, we just want to welcome you. We love Italy too, Sicily especially. But we just glad to have you with us. Can we call you mom? You know, like, no, it doesn't happen that way. That's a lie, okay? You're not to trust me. The idea was that she is hardly welcomed. There is I know, there's an age gap.
Bit of it.
But I know, but her family offered her all 15 years old. And he was 39 with 2 growing daughters. I
Of
mean,
her age.
yeah. Yeah, they were all about the same age. But the object is job number 1, have the boy. And that was what wife number 2 is going to do. And that's what the English would apparently like to avoid. It was said that people in Parliament were going like, oh God, he is like an overt Catholic. But you know, he's getting up there. Poor old thing, he's already in his late 30s. How much longer can he be? You know? I mean, people like us, we wouldn't be brand. I mean, they could, unimaginable, right? But the idea of some poor old 39-year-old, he'll die, and then we can go back and get a nice Protestant ruler. Presumably, William and Mary. And then James II, when he has time, when he's not dating, he can go in for the new queen, Mary, and says, baby, let's make a boy. So, doesn't sound very romantic to me, but that's the way it is. That is what Mary did. And I find it distasteful. I think we all do. But that was the purpose. And they were married a long time. I mean, I assume they were relatively happy, but she had miscarriages. And it was taking more time and greater concern. And you think during that period, we're talking about the 1680s, when he first becomes king. And they are trying so hard. Then one day, and Modena is, by the way, is a part of Italy where she was from. So they were of I would say the second level of nobility, but the main thing is we want a baby, and here it was. They finally had it. And boy, you talk about a mixed blessing. Sure, if you're in some kind of Catholic group, they're going, yay, a Catholic baby. But the rest of the population is going, boo, hiss. We don't want. And he's a male. So we got a Catholic male child, James. James Francis Edward. Isn't it funny how they dress them up like in those particular outfits? But that seems to have been the choice of outfits and the little cap and so forth. The decision to accept or reject this child was not an easy one. Mary, the daughter, remember King James II had a daughter, Mary? Dare I say it? Mary had evil in her heart. Hallmark would never accept the script for this because, you know, you think about Mary and say, oh, a baby, you know, it's so beautiful. And sorry, it's not like that. Mary, who was hoping to have children of her own, was telling a lot of bad things about her stepmother, that Italian Catholic woman, because she had dreams, and they did not include any children of James with Mary among them. They included it with her and her husband. So rumors began to spread. But this is a really interesting story, I think. The story of how they will begin to say that actually the child was a secret child, and Mary had actually had a stillborn child. And they replaced the fetus with a living little child in the woman. This famous story, and can you imagine? I mean, with all the rumors that you see online nowadays, I don't think we're in any position to judge. But back in that day, if you were a Protestant, you were saying, yeah, that is really her child. It's just some poor child they got in so they could claim it. And you say, well, that's very hurtful. Don't you think our young queen, that would hurt her feelings? Well, yeah. But it's all about the boy, isn't it? She's had that boy, and we're going to keep that boy, and he's going to be like his father. He's going to be king. And ironically, he will take the title of James III, but that is another story. Here he is, of course, as a young man. And remember, he was brought up Catholic. So it's not like he loved Thomas Cranmer and he wanted, please give me more Book of Comfort. No, not near me. I don't go near one of those awful books because they're all in hell. So more or less then, with now a Catholic son, notice the year 1687, so we're just 1 year away. Thanks to James II feeling good, you know, they'd had cigars back then. I guess he would have been passing them around to his supporters. And meanwhile, his government this Declaration of Indulgence. Remember what the Declaration of Indulgence is? You can believe whatever. Of course, he was doing this for his Catholic buddies, but then we have to include everybody else. All you Presbyterians and the like.
Quakers.
Yeah, no. Well, we don't want to go too far, but yeah. I mean, it's like Methodists, if they had been around back then, we like them too. So all of this is like, how are the Anglicans going to respond? Not well. I can only underline not well. Because they're going to go like, tear after the king. Catholic, Pope-loving king. The thrill is gone. You've lost that loving thing. Because now the bishops, can you imagine the Anglican bishops denounce the king? And they're going like, I mean, this is kind of rude. I mean, you know, from the pulpit, they refuse to read the Declaration of Indulgence. They're going to say, oh, hell no, heck no, you know, like, and it's like, he is real irritated, cross, vexed. And so basically, do you think they must have been escorted from the pulpit? When you look up a video of that, like, they take them out, you're going to the tower, you're going to check in. And they were done doing that for refusing to issue that Declaration of Indulgence. So it's like a revolt against, what would you say, royal rights? Because basically the king was going to enforce sort of freedom for everybody. So all of this then would lead to a new king and queen. That's where we get to college. William and Mary. Mary, of course, was James' daughter from his first marriage. And William was her cousin through Charles I's daughter. I know you're thinking about DNA. I'm with you. Cousins should not, we really like a cousin, but not that way. Okay. But these two, I don't mean that William was opposed to loving dating, even though I know you think of Dutch and they just don't behave. No, it's more to life than tulips. So, William and Mary then, William, through his mother and others, probably had very strong desires to take that throne. Because remember, and I know all this is probably straight, his mother was Charles I's daughter, right? It's not like he had grown up and thought, you're going to stay here in the Netherlands all your miserable life. No, there may be a future for you in England. So you marry cousin Mary and see what y'all can do. And Mary thought they had it made until that Italian came.
That's right.
Yes. She and Daddy got a baby, a little boy. So all of that means parliamentary leaders are not going to say, let's chop off the king's head. But instead, because we've already tried that in that wretched republic, so no more of that. What we are going to do is get a new king and queen. And through them, establish what they will call a glorious revolution. And I think that'll be a good place to stop.
Are you gonna
And,
tell us what happened to the questionable son? Why was it?
oh, you mean he will be?
He will be, okay.
Yeah, yeah,
After them.
coming,
Got it,
coming,
okay.
yeah.
I
I
didn't know
mean-
you were getting to that late, okay.
Yeah. This will be session 5 next.
That'd be 5, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I mean, very excited, glorious revolution. Oh, and if your concerns are very, and they will be fruitful otherwise. I mean, James will have other children by Mary and Odina. But she's young, she's got fertility, I don't know how long that could be, but if she starts having them at 16, I think you could just keep on going. And so, yes, she had quite a few. But anyway, I'll see y'all next time, okay? Thank you.